Welcome back to Starship Flight 12, the first test flight of Starship version 3. As Dan mentioned earlier, we were able to make contact with the modified satellites just shortly after deployment. And as you may have seen, we got some sweet views of those sats looking back at the ship. Pretty cool to see.
Yeah, those views were incredible.
Now, as you see on your screen, currently the ship is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. This is the plasma starting to build up on the exterior of the vehicle. Now, we do not plan to recover the spacecraft today, but rapid and reliable reusability is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's right. And re-entry is a critical phase of flight, and we need information on how the ship's systems perform. Re-entry is an extremely demanding portion of flight where we essentially have to scrub all of the energy we used to launch the rocket back off in reverse. So the 18 million pounds of thrust that we had off 33 of those Raptor engines.
Just a little.
Just a little. We're now, and then another, several minute burn on the ship. We're now basically undoing all that energy here via aerodynamic braking, essentially. And of course, Starlink is a big part of it, as that's what allows us to actually gather this data and show these live views. And again, the data gathering is really the main reason why we're doing these flight tests. So Starlink provides us just one more path to collect that data that ultimately allows us to rapidly iterate Starship's design.
Now, if ship manages to make it all the way through re-entry, we'll collect valuable data on the spacecraft flying through the Earth's atmosphere at these hypersonic speeds, which is basically more than 5 times the speed of sound. Now, we do anticipate that it might be a little bit of a spicy re-entry, so we'll see how far we get. Re-entry is typically a portion of flight where we don't have communications with the spacecraft because it's re-entering at or around orbital velocity, roughly 8 kilometers per second, or for those of us that think in other units, roughly 5 miles per second. At those speeds, the spacecraft is moving through the atmosphere, and it creates that plasma field that we saw forming around the vehicle.
Yeah, and although the plasma looks really cool, it does distort some communication frequencies. So it's not uncommon to experience brief blackouts in communication. Of course, thinking long-term here, Starship is designed to land on Mars where there are no runways or other humans to help out. That's why we're going with the propulsive landing instead of a more traditional means like parachutes. Propulsive landing, not only, again, is it more cool, but it enables a more rapidly reusable rocket.
Yeah. Now, we should hear some call-outs as the ship makes its way back to Earth. When we hear entry max heating and entry max Q, that means the ship has made it through the maximum heating and aerodynamic loads that it will experience as it returns. So if we make it through those, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. And you can see in the bottom left right now, we're at 23,500 kilometers per hour speed. That's just a crazy number to think about. But as we keep progressing the mission, we are going to hear a call out when the ship is transonic and then subsonic. So transonic refers to the period of flight where the velocities of airflow surrounding and flowing past the vehicle are concurrently below, at, and above the speed of sound, kind of in that Mach 0.8 to 1.2 range. And for reference, commercial jets have a range of cruising speeds, but mostly fly around Mach 0.74 to Mach 0.85. And after we hear the call out that Starship is transonic, we should hear the call out when Starship is subsonic. This refers to speeds that are much less than the speed of sound, so at this point in the flight, ship's velocity will be slowing down.
We definitely have a crowd still here in the lobby of SpaceX headquarters down here at Starbase, Texas. Everyone is, loves watching ship re-entry. It's always such amazing colors. This must be what it feels like to be one of those praying mantis shrimp. I can't remember exactly what the name is, but the ones that see in billions of colors. This is the closest I feel to being one of those.
Yep. I think one other thing that's cool to point out right now is look in the bottom right. You can see where we are on a globe there. We're squarely in the Indian Ocean already, and we've only been flying for 53 minutes.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy. We went all the way from Texas to the Indian Ocean in less than an hour.
Yeah. She flies pretty fast.
She
that
flies
is for
very
sure.
fast.
All right, so the light show continuing. We are through the period of peak heating, and we'll be looking at the peak pressure coming up in the next couple of minutes. The next 10 minutes are probably going to be the spiciest of entry today. As a reminder, we are going to be doing some stress work on this ship, where we're going to do a maneuver where we kind of kick the nose up to fully deploy those aft flaps to really get a good test of the structural strength of that part of the ship. We did that on one previous flight test on version 2. We're going to try and do that today. Since we did skip the in-space burn, we're carrying a little bit of extra propellant in our header tanks up in the nose, and so that's going to put a little bit of extra stress on those forward flaps as we come in. So we will see if they're able to hold through that reentry. So that will be another watch item. We did skip that in-space burn, but we are expecting at least 2 of those sea level engines to try and ignite for a landing burn. We entered the entry period in a good attitude, so hopefully making our way to the targeted splashdown point. We've got that Starship recovery team standing by, and we should be about 10 minutes away from splashdown. So a lot of excitement over the next couple of minutes. Kate and Jake, let's see how Starship holds up on the way in.
Yeah, and we just heard on the nets there that engine chill has started. So essentially what that means is we are prepping the landing engines by getting them down to temperature ahead of that landing burn later in the mission here.
And on a lot of our previous flight tests, we've been removing a bunch of the tiles. If you've watched those, we were really intentionally trying to push ship beyond its limits. On the last flight, we even had basically a hole get punched into the liquid oxygen tank that you could see when we did the landing burn into the ocean, and the ship was still able to make it. But right now, we're really going to be testing the structural strength of these flaps on the way in. Again, this is a flight test. We're trying to intentionally find where our limits are. And in this view, you're looking at a whole bunch of tiles. I think Jake talked about it earlier. We bonded some additional tiles to the leeward, or kind of the metal side of Starship, to see how those different bonding techniques would hold up. And looking like we've got quite a bit still attached.
Yeah, and as we're going down through the atmosphere here, we are at about Mach 16.1. So still extremely fast, although we have, scrubbed off a substantial amount of our speed already. Altitude at a little less than 60 kilometers.
All right, we're about 8 minutes away from our targeted landing and splashdown time. Again, this is when the ship's going to start really
Ship
getting
is
put
approaching
through
the
ringer.
end of the peak heating region.
Just heard the call out, getting to the end of the peak heating. So the highest temperature the Starship's going to see during its reentry.
This camera angle changes as it is attached to the forward flap on Starship. So we're actually experiencing the articulation of that hardware, helping to steer the ship down for its precise landing in the Indian Ocean.
Yep, that is just a really cool, kind of cool piece of perspective there. I know some people say it makes them a little seasick, but I definitely love it. It makes it feel like you're really riding along with the ship on the way down.
Yeah, and aside from just looking cool, all these camera views providing just really critical data on how the heat shield, how the flaps themselves are holding up. That's why we've got these in the flaps and then all scattered all around the ship so you can see how they hold up. There's some internal to the vehicle too and we're getting all of this video back via Starlink. Even as we're just enshrouded in plasma, we're able to kind of operate at a high enough frequency to punch through, and that is blue ocean and sunlight you're seeing just beyond the flaps. So we are coming down into daylight, hopefully splashing down in the next 6 minutes or so in the Indian Ocean. We've still got a couple maneuvers lined up where we're going to be really stressing the flaps on the ship. So
Ship has passed through the peak heating region. External temperatures are coming down.
Wow, that is incredible news. As Dan mentioned, we were expecting this reentry to be super spicy, but excellent news that we're now past that period of peak heating and that now the external temperatures are starting to decrease. Those heat shield tiles there on the belly of the ship really doing a ton of work to burn off all of that inertia that the vehicle had prior to re-entering the atmosphere.
Yeah, and you can tell by the G meter down on the bottom right that we're starting to pick up a couple more Gs here, so we're definitely entering the thicker part of the atmosphere where we're scrubbing off all that energy, like Kate's saying.
all right, just about 5 minutes or so to go. We're coming up shortly on the maneuver where it's affectionately called the flap slap, where we're going to kind of pitch the nose up on the ship, and you're going to see those aft flaps, the ones in the very bottom, fully deploy.
Ship is at peak dynamic pressure.
And we're now at peak pressure.
Ship flap load test has started.
Looks like it's holding. Again, the intent of that was to put just a lot of extra stress on those aft flaps. We are expecting the forward ones too to see a little bit of extra stress as we've got a little more propellant in our header tank, so the area right at the very nose of
Ship
Starship.
flap load test is complete.
And we're through that test.
There we go. And we just did that test at Mach 7, just for reference there. So we are still going incredibly fast.
All right, we are just about 3.5 minutes or so away from our targeted landing burn. Again, we're expecting to try and see 2 of these Raptor engines light for the landing burn. Normally we plan for 3, but we're going to give it a try with 2. Hopefully we've got
Ship is starting the RTLS banking maneuver.
And that right there, so we're starting a banking maneuver, and essentially what that is when we come back to Starbase, or when we plan to come back to Starbase, the trajectory is designed so we'll essentially swing out over the Gulf and do a swoop maneuver to then come back to the towers for catch. And so we are doing that exact same maneuver as we head towards our targeted splashdown in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, and that call out there that we heard, RTLS, stands for Return to Launch Site. So definitely a pretty cool thing we're demoing here on the ship. You know, as in the future, we are going to be trying to bring the ship back to the launch site, which is going to be absolutely insane.
Absolutely. But of course, we want to test out these maneuvers, these principles, prior to actually bringing the hardware back to the pad. This is the same reason why we were intentionally not trying to bring the booster back to the pad. So we're trying all these things out in this developmental phase of the vehicle, and really proving what a test flight is.
Absolutely.
Dynamic pressure is coming down.
All right, we heard there dynamic pressure coming down, and I'd say we're in a pretty good bank right now.
Yeah, executing the power slide. We're about 90 seconds away from our anticipated landing burn. Clouds coming up, pretty sunrise on the other side of the planet.
Starship is subsonic and is on target.
The crowd here reacting to that call out, letting us know that we are on target for this precise landing in the Indian Ocean. This will once again be a soft splashdown. We should get some pretty cool views from the recovery team who we chatted with earlier. They are standing by to receive this ship. Once again, this is the first flight of our completely redesigned Starship version 3.
Yeah, and if you remember the suborbital flights from a few years ago, this is very much the same regime that we're in here. So we're sub 15 kilometers, executing what we call the belly flip maneuver.
Yes, serial number 8, the first belly flop. I remember it well. Just some really amazing views of the Earth as the ship is coming back home. Thanks, Starlink.
Yeah, you can see the aft flap there making minor corrections.
Starship is turning for final approach to landing site.
Look at that turn.
There we go. Minor corrections and a full turn.
Yeah, Starship doesn't fly like an airplane. It's a lot more like a skydiver. Full belly flop on the way down, using those flaps similar to arms to help change the path of the air over you. Coming up real soon. Again, going for a landing burn, trying to light 2 of these Raptor sea level engines.
Landing burn startup.
Landing burn startup. 2 engines lit. Successful flip. Buoy cam
Starship is
catching
landed.
it.
Good shot time.
Today, as weird as it may sound to